Yeah, so super cute. Hello, and welcome to the Wool Needles Hands Knitting Podcast. My name is Taylor, and I will be your host. This is a podcast primarily about knitting, though I do get up to other fiber-related topics from time to time. I'm coming to you from Henderson, Nevada, which is a small suburb outside of Las Vegas, Nevada, in the southwest United States. This is where I'm from and where I live with my husband Brandon, our 6-year-old son Angus, and our 3-year-old son Ronan. I'm also the owner and dyer of Fiber for the People yarn, and if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can do that using the email contact@fiberforthepeople.com. If you'd like to learn more, you can head over to Instagram at fiber.for.the.people. That is the online social media for all things Fiber for the People. And if you'd like to go even deeper down the Fiber for the People rabbit hole, and I so hope that you do, you can head over to fiberforthepeople.com, look around over there, and definitely don't forget to sign up for the newsletter at the bottom of any page to stay in the loop about all things Fiber for the People. Welcome to episode 50 of the podcast, you guys. We have made it to the 50th episode. I am so excited. It has been a long time. The podcast has been going since 2017, and I guess we're only on the 50th episode, but it's a milestone, and I'm really excited to be here with you guys. So thank you so much for taking the time to join me today for episode 50 of the podcast. I have a great episode lined up for you guys, including a sneak peek at a sock that I am knitting for an upcoming sock tutorial. But before we get into any of that, I want to get up to speed with the Wool Needles Hands Year of Knits Make-Along 2021. There is a Ravelry group associated with the Wool Needles Hands Knitting Podcast, and you can find that by heading over to Ravelry, going up to the Groups tab, and typing in Wool Needles Hands or Wool Needles Hands, a knitting podcast. You can find us over there and get involved in the make-along that we have going on right now, and just in the Wool Needles Hands Knitting Podcast community in general. You can head over there and learn more about the Wool Needles Hands Year of Knits Make-Along 2021. All of the information is over there for you, very flexible. All fiber crafts are welcome, but definitely check it out so you can be involved in this great community of makers that we have around the Wool Needles Hands Knitting Podcast. And as always, on every episode of the podcast, I like to run a clip of some of the recent finished objects coming out of the Wool Needles Hands Year of Knits Make-Along 2021. So without further ado, let's take a look at some of the things that you guys have finished. As always, thank you so much to everyone who participates in the make-along. I love going back and looking at the things that you guys are working on and being so inspired by you. I will be doing a giveaway on either the next episode of the podcast, or I'm going to make its own separate video for the giveaway coming up. So keep posted for that. One way or another, there is a giveaway coming up. I have some really great prizes for you guys, and I'm planning on doing that on either the next episode of the podcast or a little video in between this and the next episode. So definitely keep posted. And if you have yet to get involved in the make-along, please do, so that I have more projects to share right here on the podcast. Welcome to the Slippers and Sippers segment of the podcast. This is the segment where I share with you what I am drinking and what kind of cozy numbers I have on my feet in terms of socks or slippers. It is a little warmer here these days in the Mojave Desert region of the country, so I'm not wearing an awful lot of slippers, but I do have some on right now just to be a little extra cozy, and it helps when you're walking around on hard floors, even in the summertime. So I am sporting a pair of slippers, which I will share with you in just a second. But I am also drinking a mug of Gypsy Cold Care by Traditional Medicinals Tea Company in my mug, which I'll tell you about my mug in a second. But I'm drinking Gypsy Cold Care because I am over, for the most part, a cold that kind of went through our house. Just a minor head cold, nothing major, no fevers or anything like that. But I'm kind of getting over that still a little bit. So if I sound sort of nasally, that's what's going on. But I find that Gypsy Cold Care tea by this Traditional Medicinals company is fantastic when you have a cold. Obviously that's what it's intended for, but I find that it really does help to kind of alleviate some of the annoying symptoms of having a head cold, and I drink a lot of it when I'm feeling under the weather. And so I have that in here right now because I also really love the taste. I drink Gypsy Cold Care even when I'm not, under the weather. It's a lovely tea. I don't know exactly what is in the tea that makes it so yummy, but it's very warm, has a little bit of a spiciness to it, but it's very pleasant, perfect for that time when you're feeling just not that great. So that's what I have going on in my mug, and my mug is a hand-painted ceramic mug. So I painted this. I didn't make the mug, but I painted it with my son. We went for a little mommy and me evening at a ceramic painting studio near our house. He painted a piggy bank that looked like Iron Man, and I painted this mug, and it's really silly. I could feel like I could have done much better, but I'm also trying to make sure my son can use the paints and knows exactly what he needs to do, and so this is just very I don't know, maybe a little rough around the edges, but I did individual little speckles. I was gonna try and see if I could flick the paint onto the mug to give it a nice speckled look, but that didn't work for me, so I just went and did little dots on my mug. So that is my my little hand-painted mug from the Mommy and Me ceramic session that my son and I had. So I love it. It's cute and kind of a fun memory. But let's go ahead and move on to what I am wearing on my feet. Okay, so I am wearing, and you've seen these before, these are not new, my Simple House slippers by Temple of Knit. So I knit these a little while ago. If you watch the voiceover vlogs, this was one of the first episodes of the voiceover vlog, but I knit these a while ago and I love them. So this is a pattern, like I said, by Temple of Knit, and it's just a very simple design for a pair of slippers. And from what I gather from folks who have commented on these and just things that I've seen from other people who have made these, this is a design that goes way back. So this particular version of the design was written by Temple of Knit, but you can find all kinds of different versions of this, essentially the same design. And they're very simple. They fly off the needles super fast. This I did with a, I believe this is just a worsted weight skein. I can't remember, was this DK weight? No, this was worsted. So it's worsted weight yarn. And I would recommend, though, if you do this pattern, you can kind of see how like floppy they are. If you're going to knit a pair of these and you want them to be pretty hard wearing, or you want them to have a little bit more structure, I would throw two strands together in whatever weight you want, because honestly, when it comes to sizing these, it's really about how much you knit. It's not, I guess your stitch gauge matters, but they're pretty easy to adjust if you decide to change the weight of your yarn. But I would choose something a little bit more sturdy. This is a merino cashmere nylon. Oh, okay, so if this is MCN, and I know that it is, this is DK weight. I would do them in a nice hardy worsted weight to give it a little bit more structure on the same needle size to tighten the fabric up a little bit. So those are little things that I thought about after working on these, but it doesn't matter. It really just depends on how you want to wear them. But that's kind of what I would think is something maybe a little bit sturdier, but I really love them. This is the Azure colorway by Fiber for the People. A really beautiful blue-green kind of ocean-inspired colorway. And then I did a little pom-pom in my this is my rattan colorway. And I think it's a really fun contrast. So that is what I'm wearing on my feet, and it's very cozy. But I want to share with you guys a couple things. So some, what do they call that? Shopkeeping. In my previous episodes of the podcast, I shared with you my Stripy Socks. It's something I've been sharing over the course of the last few episodes. So here are my Stripy Socks. I'll talk about these for just a second. So I have been working on a little collection of stripy socks using 3 different colorways of yarn and interchanging the colors of the stripes to come up with a little fun collection of socks and to use up the odd ball skeins of yarn. Now I am almost finished with, I'm still working on, I'm about a fourth of the way through my second green sock, and then I'll need to do my second pink sock here, which in the last episode I had finished these, but things looked a little bit different. I didn't have a contrasting toe, and the reason why I added a contrasting toe to this was because my previous toe was far too squared off. I didn't decrease enough because I was worried my toe was going to be too long. So I went back, ripped it out, and actually made the adjustment and then made a normal toe. But I used a contrasting color just to see how I would like it. So this is the only sock of the stripy socks that has a contrasting toe. It's kind of cute. But, you know, I mean, it's up to you. But the reason I'm sharing these now is because in the previous episodes of the podcast, I had mentioned that I was going to be having a shop update with kits to sell, to make the stripy socks. And that is still happening. However, if you were paying attention on Instagram, if you follow over on Instagram, you may have seen earlier this month that I had decided to postpone my my shop update into June 5th. I needed to allow myself some breathing room for the month of May because things started stacking up for me both in our family life and in my work schedule. And I just needed to allow myself some space to breathe before doing that shop update. So I am still going to be listing kits for Stripey Socks. I have lots of them and they're going to be going into the shop on June 5th. So just to let you know, it is an update to what I mentioned before. You did not miss the kits. They're still coming, but it's going to be June 5th. So keep an eye out for that. But and now that we've talked about that, what I did want to share with you guys, a little project that I am working on right now, and I'm gonna kind of make sure I don't make a mess here. Okay, so I am in the process of creating or producing a sock tutorial. So I wanted to do a little bit more thorough of a tutorial on how to knit socks using my method for knitting socks. Everybody has their own way of knitting socks, and this is just my way of doing it. So I am working on that right now. There's much more involved in doing that than I originally thought when I set out to do it. You really have to kind of make sure you take the time and think about how you're going to film it, how you're going to narrate it, and then also how you're going to show the process. So it's been taking a little bit longer than I had initially expected, but it's coming, and I wanted to share with you the sock that I'm making while I do the tutorial, and I wanted to share this with you for a couple of reasons, but also just to kind of get you excited about the tutorial, which is coming. So here is I call it my tutorial sock, and there's a few things about this sock that are different than my like traditional sock. So when I go to knit a pair of socks, this is kind of my standard sock. I have, a 20 row cuff, and then I have about like 3.5 inches of ankle, and then I knit my foot to 2 inches below the tip of my big toe. And that's, essentially what I do for my socks. Now that's obviously not something that's like, I wanted to be able to explain that more clearly. So I decided to do this tutorial. But in the case of a tutorial, when things are a little bit more, not time sensitive, but it's hard to film a tutorial and knit an entire sock in one go. I decided to shorten things up a little bit for convenience. So this sock is kind of like a shortened version of my traditional sock. So you can see here that my cuff is a little bit shorter. The ankle is a little bit shorter, things like that. But other than that, it follows the same rule of how I knit my socks. All you would do to adjust it is add some more length here and then add some length in the cuff. So this is coming. I'll be doing the whole tutorial, and this is the sock that I will be using in that tutorial. But the reason I wanted to share this with you, and I do plan on talking about this in the tutorial as well, but I thought it would be useful to share it with you here now. I wanted to point out something about how I'm knitting these to create the most even fabric possible in terms of the color. So this is a colorway by Fiber for the People called Rain, and I actually have a skein of this. Okay, so I have a skein of this that is not caked, so you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like in the skein. So here is the sock fabric. You can kind of see that there. And then here is the skein of yarn of the colorway Rain. So I'm going to just hold this so you can get an idea of the colorway. So there it is there. So it's just a really pretty kind of warm gray base with those speckles on there, and that's lovely. Okay, so the cake of that colorway looks like this. Much more muted. You're not going to get quite as much detail going on in this cake. And there's a reason for that. So I started knitting these socks, and this is what the fabric was looking like here. And about here, I decided to change something, because what happens is when you take a skein of hand-dyed yarn like this, something that's speckled and layered, there's going to be parts of that skein that have less intense color. That's just the nature of a colorway like this. You're going to get more intensity on certain areas and less intensity as you go through the skein like this. And when you work, you know, from the inside of the skein versus the outside of the skein, all of that. So these are some changes that happen throughout the skein, and that is what causes color pooling and flashing and things like that. And so that's why with certain colorways you want to alternate your skeins of yarn so that you can even out your fabric and the way that the color is distributed across the fabric. And so I was thinking about that when I first started these, because I noticed that there was a lot of that kind of pulling and flashing happening right up here. And that's because I was pulling from the inside of the cake and knitting all from that one part of this the cake right into this area. So what I decided to do, and this can be fussy, but if you kind of are patient and allow yourself time to keep things orderly, and I'll explain what I mean in just a second, this actually works beautifully. So what I did is I started, here's my cake, I started pulling from the center, and then I would, on the next round, I would pull from the outside. And then I would pull from the center on the next round, and then pull from the outside on the next round. And that was kind of a way to simplify, instead of having two different skeins going at one time, because we're not using two skeins of yarn for a pair of socks, you can still alternate your strands and even out your fabric without having to do that. You just have to keep track of the inside and the outside strand. And so you can see after I started doing that, how even the fabric became. So you're still going to get these little stripes because that's just the way the colorway is designed, or, you know, works out on the yarn, but it's just much more even. There's no pulling. There's just little bits of color that are happening across the fabric, and it's lovely. And actually, not only does it help to give you a really nice even fabric, it makes it kind of it's fun. It's like knitting stripes, is you get to see what each round does with the new strand of yarn. It's just a fun kind of diverting process that adds an element of interest to your project. So that is something that I'm doing with these socks, because of the nature of this yarn, is I am pulling from the inside, pulling from the outside, pulling from the inside, pulling from the outside. And it's so simple. It's just a matter of picking up the other strand of yarn, and it's always right there for you. Not complicated at all. So if you are knitting a pair of socks with variegated speckled yarn particularly, that's a great option to avoid having the fabric be flashy or pull with color or anything like that maybe you don't want. And then also too, when you go to knit your other sock, you're not going to have that difference between socks that's as stark as it would be if you knit one entire sock pulling from the inside and picking up all of that saturated color, and then the other sock even still pulling from the inside, but now all of that saturated color has been used up in one place. So I don't know if that makes sense. I hope that that clarifies that a little bit for you, but that is my suggestion when you're knitting socks with a variegated or speckled yarn like that, is to pull from the inside and from the outside and alternate those strands every other round. So little tip for you guys. I love the way that it's working up. I will be chatting a little bit about that on the tutorial, and I am almost done. I am just waiting to film the toe for the sock, and I'm using, excuse me, I am using a little mini skein in the copper sand colorway for my contrasting heels and toes and cuffs. And on top of that, I am actually going to be, it's not going to be this next shop update, but it's going to be another June update. I'm going to be dyeing kits for these socks. So there will be, not kits, but sock sets for these socks. So that is coming up as well too. So yeah, super excited about that. Keep posted to the channel for the tutorial. I'm really looking forward to sharing it with you guys. And I've been talking a lot about the tutorial over on Instagram, and I love the enthusiasm you guys have for this tutorial coming. So many of you have expressed your excitement for it. You have yarn ready, and I love that. So thank you so much. It's definitely coming, and I'm really excited to share it with you guys. Okay, you guys, I'm really excited to share with you the progress that I've made on my Chloe sweater. This is a design by Katrin Hannibal, and I'm loving the process of this knit so much. If you've been watching the podcast, you know that I kind of went back and forth between this design and the Stripes pullover by Andrea Mowry, and I settled on this for a few different reasons. You can hear me talk about that 2 episodes back, but I'm really happy that I did. Now, I am knitting this in the Fiber for the People Mojave collection. It is a collection of signature solids that you can shop in the store right now if you wanted to, but it's a collection of colorways that are inspired by the Mojave Desert, which is where I live, and they're beautiful together. And I'm knitting the sweater using a new yarn for Fiber for the People, which is called Hemp Merino Sport. It is 70% non-superwash untreated merino and 30% hemp fiber. So it is a natural yarn. It has no synthetic fiber in it, and it is non-superwash, but the hemp fiber lends such a lovely softness to the yarn, but also a little bit of a rustic look. So I'm going to show you the cake that I'm working from right now. This is the Lantana colorway, and you can really see, looking at this, you can kind of see the variation of fibers going on in here. The white fibers that have not retained any of that dye, those are the hemp fibers, and then you can see the wool fibers, the orange fibers are in there, and it gives it a nice rustic look. The yarn is a 2-ply yarn, so I will show you the strand here if I can. You can see in the strand the 2-ply construction, and it's really beautiful. But it's just, yeah, it's such a lovely yarn. So this is the yarn that I am using to knit my Chloe sweater. So here it is. Here is my Chloe pullover, and I'm so excited about it. I love the colors together. I love the variation in the stripe weights. I've been kind of improvising that as I go. I haven't been following the patterns suggested, like row count for the stripes. I've just been coming up with my own kind of variation for stripes, and I've developed a little bit of a technique for how I do that, and I definitely plan on sharing that with you guys. But I'm just having fun with it, and I like it. I like the way that it's working up. So all of these colorways are part of the Mojave collection, and we have, okay, so let's talk a little bit about those colorways here. So I have up here, this is my River Stone colorway. This is Copper Sand, Basalt. This is the Lantana colorway. This is Sagebrush. And then this is Yucca. And then we're back to Riverstone here. And I also have already added on my neckline, which is in the Yucca colorway. And I'm making some pretty good progress. So I kind of want to try this on for you guys so you can see the fit so far. It's obviously not anywhere near being finished, but I think it would be fun to kind of give you a look at how kind of an estimate on how this might fit. So let's go ahead and see this sucker on right over the top of my red t-shirt, which is gonna look a little weird. But okay, so there we are. I'm gonna set this guy in my basket. Yeah, so super cute. I'm really happy with it. I love the size of the sleeves. If this is distracting, I apologize. My computer is over here today, so I'm looking over here to kind of get a bigger picture of what I've got going on. But you can see the sleeves are going to fit nice and kind of a little bit more ease going on there, which is definitely the way I like it. Yes, so I am very happy with the way that this is coming out so far. I'm loving the process of working on this. The yarn is a pleasure to work with in the hands. It's soft, but it has enough of a grippiness to feel like you can get a good hold on it while you're working. It just flies across the needles. It's a sport weight yarn too, by the way, which I've come to really love. This is the first time I've ever really worked with a sport weight yarn, and I really do love that weight of yarn. It does have a nice rhythm to it. But I love this. I'm loving it so much. I'm really happy that I decided to go with this because I'm loving the just kind of the earthy vibe of the design with the yarn. The only thing, I always have to have some kind of critique, right? And this is less about the design and more about my choice. I'm not 100% sold on this neckline yet. I feel like the way that I picked up the stitches, I maybe didn't do the greatest job kind of picking them up evenly. So there are some places along here, and I don't know if you can see, but there are some places kind of along the seam here that maybe look a little bit more wonky. Oh, and then another thing, this is so annoying when this kind of thing happens. And fortunately, this is picked up. So if I wanted to change this altogether, it's just a matter of ripping out like this little 1/2 inch piece of collar. It's no big deal. But I started the neckline, I started picking up stitches right here, which is the front and center, and then working around. So this is where that like little seam is when you're knitting in the round and there's that little hitch where they're not completely level. That's right here. And so I have a feeling once the whole thing is finished, I'm gonna go back and redo this. And I kind of think I might like it better if I did it in a lighter color. So I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. I might change it to the sagebrush color instead of the yucca color, but I haven't decided. It's one of those afterthought things that you really don't have to worry too much about, but I wanted to add it to the garment while I was working on it to see exactly how this is going to sit on my shoulders once there's a little bit of fabric right here. So that's all I have to say about that. Otherwise, I love this, and I'm really loving the fit. I have a feeling I might not knit it to its full length. I might allow it to be a little bit, not cropped, but just a little bit shorter than what the pattern has you knitting it to. But other than that, it's just, I love it. It's super cozy. So I highly recommend this pattern, highly recommend this yarn. And you might call me biased, but I really honestly, truly do. And ever since I shared this, I've received lots of orders for similar color combinations, or you've come up with your own combination of colors in the signature solids using the hemp merino sport, and I love that because I just know you guys are going to love working with this yarn. So that is my Chloe sweater by Katrin Hannibal. Okay, you guys, that's all the time I have for today. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and spending it here with me so that I can share with you some of the things that I've been working on. Just so you know, the voiceover vlogs will be returning, but in kind of the spirit of slowing down for the month of May and taking some time, I decided to put those on the back burner for a little bit. So don't worry, they will be returning. But in the meantime, until episode 51 of the podcast, happy knitting, happy making, happy whatever it is that you're doing, and I will see you soon. Bye!